The reintegration process is happening through him remembering his wife, which are memories that he already had. And it's so interesting that when he goes through this process of reintegration, what he's flooded with and what he's forced to confront is not memories that he didn't have before, but memories that he did have, but that he's been suppressing all of this time.
Yeah.
That's the thing that he has to face and sit with in order to fully reintegrate himself with his innie. Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if this is your first time watching, we'd love it if you could hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell so that you are aware of when we post things.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast. My name is Esther.
And I'm Adrian.
And today we are here to discuss with you Season 2, Episode 7 of Severance, titled Chikhai Bardo. But first, we have received a package from Lumen Industries themselves.
AppleTV, thank you for the gift.
Let's see what's in here. We should have done this like ASMR. Oh my gosh, this is actually so exciting. Oh my gosh. Severance, a token of our infection. Sanctioned enjoyment guidelines. Please enjoy each tablet equally, dutifully, and with a smile.
This says, love is mysterious and important. Is this just candy?
Wait, perfect for me. They have words on them. Be my Kier. Oh my gosh, they do say different things. This one says goat. Love is data.
Don't like that.
All right, well, let's get into this episode because it was a whole lot. It's so extremely interesting that after Dr. Ragabi does what she does at the end of the last episode where she floods the chip, and we're meant to understand that she's basically like accelerating this process of reintegration. The memories that Mark is flooded with are not a bunch of memories of what happened to him when he was at Lumen and Severed.
Yeah.
He's not suddenly remembering all of these memories that he did not have access to before. The reintegration process is happening through him remembering his wife, which are memories that he already had. But he forced himself to forget them. He went into this mode where he did not want to remember her. And so he forced himself into a state 8 or 9 hours a day where he literally cannot remember her. But even when he's not at Lumen and when he's not in his severed form, we see that he stuffed all traces of her in this box in the basement. He does not talk about her. There are no pictures of her. The only picture we ever see of her is at Devin's and Rickon's house. So he has literally been trying so hard to not remember her. And it's so interesting that when he goes through this process of reintegration, what he's flooded with and what he's forced to confront is not memories that he didn't have before, but memories that he did have, but that he's been suppressing all of this time. That's the thing that he has to face and sit with in order to fully reintegrate himself with his innie. It's not just about like all of these things that have been happening in the basement at Lumen. It's about what's the reason, what is the thing that you have been so trying to avoid so much that caused you to get severed in the first place. That's the thing that you have to confront in order for you to be whole again.
It's such a perfect tie-in to one of the things that I noticed. When they first meet each other, Mark asks Gemma what she's reading, and she says themes of religious conversion in Tolstoy's Death of Ivan Ilyich, right? So I went and Googled to sort of see what that was about. And essentially, and this is just basically what Google says, I haven't read it, but they're essentially talking about in the book of how much pain can be a catalyst for something good in some instances. And that's kind of been something that Mark has been avoiding before his reintegration process. And in a lot of ways, we've already gotten so many religious themes throughout Severance so far. And so for this to be like a religious transformation that results in Mark finally confronting the pain that he had been avoiding is a perfect tie-in to the book that Gemma was reading and the one that he asked her about and the first scene in this episode. And I thought that was brilliant. It sets the tone.
I also think that you have the layer where Mark on his own is trying to avoid all this pain and discomfort in his life, and that's what causes him to get severed. And then you have that same dynamic that kind of exists in their marriage. But I think all of this is actually a parallel for what Lumen is actually trying to do, which they hint at when the doctor is talking to Gemma and she's asking about when she'll get to leave. And what he says to her is, Mark will be a recipient of the world that you sire. Mm-hmm. And then he says, Keir will take away all his pain just like he's taken away yours.
Yeah.
I have ideas about what I think Lumen is trying to do, but I feel like I want to talk first about like the dynamics of their marriage, because I think that this episode was trying to use the dynamics of their marriage as a cautionary tale against what Lumen is trying to do writ large with society. What it appeared to me was Mark, and I think also Gemma on my rewatch, both of them have a habit of pulling into themselves when there is something going wrong to avoid inflicting pain and discomfort on the other person. And we talked a little bit this yesterday about how like this issue in particular, this issue of not being able to have a child, is one that can be extremely isolating, because on the part of Gemma, I think that she definitely feels guilty and she feels like she's failed in some way. And so there's moments in the episode where we see even she does not necessarily open up or go to Mark to process what she's going through. Like after they go through their rounds of, what my understanding is that it's IVF or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then we see her sitting in like a dark room with a pregnancy test, and you hear Mark in the background yelling down to her about like if she wants coffee or something, and she just kind of like closes the door, so we know like, okay, so see, they are not pregnant. But I think that her closing the door, also when she hears Mark in the other room like messing around with the bed and stuff, she is also alone outside and keeping to herself also. Like both of them have this tendency to not do that. I think on her end it's because she feels guilty and doesn't know how to process this with him, because she feels like, well, how can I talk to him about this, what I am experiencing and going through, when like I am the reason why he is being deprived of having a child, and I am the cause for his suffering. And so she's refusing to necessarily open up to him because she doesn't want to inflict that harm on him. And then the same thing from his end, he's refusing to process with her because he doesn't want her to feel guilty, and he doesn't want her to feel like she's failed in some way. And so both of them, with the intention of like lessening the harm on each other, like the irony is that they're creating a situation in their marriage where they are both just lonely and isolated, and so they're creating harm. And I feel like this, I think, is what is happening with Lumen. The whole philosophy of Lumen, I think, is that they believe that with the severance process, they can create a world where people do not experience any of the painful or uncomfortable or unenjoyable moments of life. Because what we watch her do in this episode is going into all of these rooms and doing things that people don't like to do, no matter how like minute, like the thing where she's writing the thank you cards,
or going to the dentist, flying on a plane,
right? A bumpy ride on a plane,
which,
right?
Relatable,
especially right now.
Right.
So it seems like what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to use the severance procedure to say, hey, you guys don't have to experience any of this. You can go through your life and never have to remember any of the uncomfortable experiences that are just a part of the human experience, things that we have to endure. We'll make sure you don't have to remember any of it. It'll be like it's not happening. I'm going to take your pain away, right? The way that he says that, oh, I took Gemma's pain away and I'll take Mark's pain away. I'm not going to let you guys go through any of this. But the irony is that in their attempt to do that, they are also creating another world, the any world, where all they know is suffering, where all they know is pain. And that's exactly what we see happen in Gemma and Mark's marriage. They're trying to avoid this pain and discomfort, and what they do is they end up just flooding their marriage with it. And it's the exact same thing with the severance process. You're saying you're taking people's pain away, but then you're creating this whole other existence now that is only pain, that is only the worst parts of life for the innies.
It's interesting. What you're saying reminded me, I was trying to quickly Google it. I don't know if you've ever seen the conversation that Anderson Cooper had with Stephen Colbert like a few years ago, but it's an interview where Colbert is, he's a very religious person and he's pretty open about it. And he was talking about like how welcoming he is for things like grief and pain, right? And in the interview, Anderson kind of breaks down because like he can't. I'm assuming he's not that much of a religious person, but he couldn't understand the idea of like why would you want that? And the way that Colbert says it so eloquently, right? But I'm just going to try to paraphrase based off the quote where he was like, well, what do you get from grief or loss? You get the awareness of other people's loss, which allows you to love more deeply and to understand what it's like to be a human being. That experience is something that I feel like Gemma and Mark could have benefited from if they were honest about what they were both truly feeling in that moment. Like, you know, like when Mark says like, I have no idea how you're feeling. And then Gemma responds and says like, I feel like shit. Like there's two ways to sort of read that. Like one, you can be a little bit more supportive for her in what she's probably experiencing and maybe not try to be like a fixer, which I felt there were certain vibes of that, which me being a fixer, I related to that to a degree, but then also maybe trying to use more language to give a more in-depth idea so Mark could understand what you're going through. So just in the both sides of it, it's protection that they're really trying to preserve here, protection of themselves and protection of their partner. And there's something noble about it, but I think we kind of saw how it deteriorated at Mark and Gemma's marriage because of it. So
I think it's just at the end of the day where I think the story is heading is they're trying to get us to see that capitalism makes all these promises about fulfillment.
yeah.
And it makes all these promises about joy and contentment. And all of these promises are based in these very superficial ideas. In this case, this idea of like, we can remove all of the pain from your life and then you'll be good to go and your tempers will be in balance and like whatever, you know? But at the end of the day, the key to true contentment in life is always going to be human connection, and capitalism never serves that. It never serves that purpose.
Yep.
It always, because it is dependent on driving wedges between people. It is dependent on this scarcity mindset and this idea of one versus the other. Because it's dependent on all of that, it can never serve that purpose. And so no matter what it is promising you, it is most likely making the quality of your life worse, as is what we are seeing in Severance.
They're doing such a good job of showing that like the issue of capitalism is not just a financial one. Like it's an existential one that's going to hit every facet of your daily life experience.
I think the other thing that I think it's also getting at is kind of that quote of just like the need to go through human experiences. And like the failed promise in this case is like the removal of those, even the things that we don't like in life, the removal of those things does not supply you with happiness. Because not only is it creating a world where there are people who don't get to experience any of the best things in life, like what we're seeing with Dylan, who's not getting to experience like the part of his life that would be with his family and his children. But also we see that for the people who are severed, they are not experiencing this great happiness that you guys are promising to them. It robs them of something to not go through the totality of their lived experience. Also,
I love the title of this episode, Chikhai Bardo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This episode really gives a keen eye into what I think is like a pillar of the origin of what Severance came from, really, when you really look at what the meaning of the word Chikhai Bardo means. Like Bardo essentially is the state of existence that is intermediate between two lives on Earth, which you know what I mean? A lot of it is sort of tying to what I think Gemma described to Mark with the cards when Mark kind of pokes fun at it, and then Gemma says it's about the same guy fighting himself, resisting the urge to flee away from pain that is inconvenient, resisting the urge of going through hardship that might be necessary. In their marriage case with Mark and Gemma, maybe resisting the urge to have those difficult conversations that might have been necessary. The reoccurring theme throughout this entire episode was to accept your whole self. You've got to accept the negative experiences that you're going through, because that's how you can become a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And that's how you live a full life.
Yeah.
I also think the other thing with the Chikhai Bardo thing is when I looked it up, and I think you did mention it just now, but this idea that it's the moment that occurs right when you die, according to Buddhist tradition. So it's the moment that occurs right when you die, where in like it's saying like your body is between these two states, but it's about to go through this process of rebirth. And I feel like, to me, what that idea is getting at in connection to this episode is that like this moment of loss is the beginning of something else, of something new.
Yes.
And we are so used to thinking of these ideas of loss and trauma and grief and pain as only that.
Yeah.
Rather than the beginning of whatever else is going to flow from this. Like that quote from Stephen Colbert, essentially saying like, this is it's a sad moment. It's a terrible thing that's happening to you. And it's also the beginning of a new way to connect to the people around you.
Yeah.
All of these things are dual.
Yes.
Like that's what it's trying to get at to me. And that's why the title to me made so much sense for this episode. All of these things they are not just one thing. It's not just the end. It's also the beginning. It's not just a terrible thing that is happening to you. It also can be an opportunity for something else to come out of this, but you have to endure it and you have to face it for yourself, and capitalism ain't gonna fix it for you.
Yeah. And you know what this also reminded me of? The first Inside Out, when Riley has to learn how to process like sadness, and they spent that entire movie trying to keep sadness from touching the feelings that Riley had, because they didn't want it to change into something that they felt was bad, something that was permanent. And then at the end of the movie, a new color is born, right? Something that the pain is still there, but growth, maturity, a new perspective on that comes out of it, which I feel like is exactly what Mark experiences, hopefully, at the end of this episode. Yeah.
When he finally does remember.
Yes.
It's like it's like, the people that I know or that I've seen talk about loss and grief and talking about their loved ones. I think like a lot of us have a tendency to, I know I for sure do, because I haven't had like very, very personal experiences with death that was like unexpected. So I'm always like, I never really know how to talk about it with people. But when I listen to people who have experienced like tremendous loss, one of the things that they often say is like, people like to avoid the topic, and they like to avoid talking to you about the person that you've lost, because they assume that it's just going to make you sad. And what I've heard a lot of people say is like, yeah, it does make you sad, but it also is nice to remember them. And like just the fact, like just those two truths just existing at the same time. It's like, at least people that I've seen, that I know that have like gone through like the work to like really process the grief, it's like you don't get to a point where it's not going to make you a little bit sad to remember them, but it's like there's like a good kind of sadness to it, to have the opportunity to share these memories of this person with somebody else.
And I think that's what Devin's friend, like the black woman in season 1, was looking for from Mark when she was asking him about Gemma.
And he
didn't want to do
just
it.
Shut it down. He just wasn't there yet. He wasn't ready. I wonder if they really will get a reunion. Part of me is like, I don't know.
Mark and Gemma?
Yeah.
I think this episode made me even more confident that we will.
That we will.
I don't know if it'll be like a happy go jolly kind of ending. I think the purpose in this specific story, I don't think the purpose in the story arc for them is to live happily ever after as a couple. I think the story arc in this episode for Mark and Gemma seemed to present the idea of what they need to learn from that moment in their marriage. And I think scenes that we might get between them will serve as a healing factor for both of them. Even it may result in, let's say, they don't get to live happily after, which I would love 100%. And that wouldn't feel insufficient or a cop-out, but I do feel like I would understand from a narrative perspective if their reunion serves as a purpose of healing rather than something that provides a marriage second chance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I'm real scared for her. That doctor is terrifying.
Hey, yo, bro.
Relax.
I do not like that man at all.
When he was talking, first of all, why he lied to her like that, talking about Mark got moved on and had a child. That man is the furthest thing from moving on. I mean, well, his innie, but like that, his outie, like, then he was like, maybe you've moved on too behind one of these doors.
Gap.
Maybe I've seen it.
Gap. You ain't seen nothing.
No, sir. The audacity of you to try to use these memories that she can't have against her in that way. I do not like you. I do not respect you. And I am terrified of you.
Also, I guess maybe talk a little bit more theory stuff with Gemma. All those different rooms, I'm assuming, are different versions of Severance that she has. And it seemed like in this episode, she visits 6.
She visited 6 today, but there's mad rooms in there, and every time she visited, it's a different her that does not remember the other rooms.
So which room is Miss Casey?
The elevator is Miss Casey.
No, well, I guess I'm wondering like the name of it is what I wasn't sure.
I don't think there's a name. I think because that's what happens. She runs out, she leaves, she gets in the elevator, and she goes up, and she becomes Miss Casey.
Yeah, but the Miss Casey is a severed version of Gemma.
Yes.
Which is like the other examples of severed version of Gemma.
Yes.
When she went into like the wellness one with the dentist, is there a name for the MDR floor the same way there were names for those other rooms?
No, because the other rooms are the files that the MDR people are going through. Allentown, Cold Harbor, all of those are names of
Wellington,
files.
I think they called it.
Yeah, all of those are names of files that the refiners have been refining.
Okay.
So the data that they have been refining is directly correlated to each of those rooms that she has been going into and each different severed form of her. What we do know is that they don't name the rooms until they have completed the file, and she does not enter the room until they have completed the file.
No, but
he hasn't completed Cold Harbor.
But they did name it.
Yeah, but he's almost done. He's at 96%. So they named it and they just put the name on it. She said there's only one room I haven't been in yet, and it has a name now. Yeah. He says Cold Harbor, and she hasn't gone in there yet because he's stuck at 96%. Mm-hmm. But I think they named it because he's about to be. That's why everybody's like, oh, he's so close to being done.
Well, I don't think he will anymore because he's been reintegrated.
You don't think he'll ever finish it? I think he's going to go back and finish it.
I think that would slow down the progress of the story, in my opinion.
I don't think so. I feel like Cold Harbor has been such a crucial thing. I think we have to know what's in the room.
Yeah, I think we may find out without it. A completion of Cold Harbor feels like everyone's lost. Like that feels like a thing that they're trying to avoid. Like if we get that, then we can't save Gemma.
Oh, well, yeah, because then she'll be done.
Right.
And whatever happens when she's done is not good. They say they have to say goodbye. What that mean? We don't know.
I don't know.
She's not going back outside though.
No, they would never let that happen. All right, y'all. Well, those are our thoughts. As always, we love to see what you guys think about this episode. We love your thoughts and your comments. We try our best to read and respond to them all. And so thank you all for the support that you guys have been giving us over the last few weeks. And with that, we will see you all next week. Take care, everyone. Peace.